Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Akundiayo, and for today, you can think of me as the principal of the explainer. I want to warmly invite all of you, parents, guardians, and my fellow educators, into what we're kind of treating as a supportive virtual PTA meeting. Today, we're looking at a very urgent, totally unexpected new government directive coming out of Ogun State that is going to directly impact our school calendars, our students, and honestly, our families. We're going to walk through exactly what this means together, using the information provided directly by the state. So grab a seat and let's get into it.
To really understand the gravity of this situation, we've got to look directly at the source. This circular, signed by A.A. Basiriu, the Director of Education for Private Schools, on behalf of the Permanent Secretary, is absolutely unequivocal. Listen to this. The Ogun State Ministry of Education, Science and Technology has directed all public and private schools across the state to immediately discontinue the organization of graduation ceremonies and end-of-session parties. You guys, this isn't a proposal and it's not a suggestion for next year. This is an undeniable authority and an immediate reality for our schools right now.
Okay, let's dive right into our agenda for this explainer. First, the new playground rules. Second, why the music had to stop. Third, breaking rules brings penalties. Fourth, informing our school family. And finally, a letter to parents. All right, Section 1, the new playground rules. Understanding the directive. To make sense of this massive, sweeping intervention, let's just look at a really simple school regulation metaphor. Imagine you're a principal, right? And you notice a few students are playing entirely too rough on the playground swings. To ensure everyone's safety and restore order, you basically have to close the swings down for everyone, at least for now. Well, that's essentially the state reality we're facing today. The government has halted all school parties statewide across both public and private schools. They communicated this through the zonal education officers because, just like that principal closing the swings, they received reports of behavior that required an immediate blanket intervention. Let's move to Section 2. Why stop the music? Looking at the root causes. So, why did the government actually step in? Well, the ministry lays out its justification very clearly. The government received reports that some school administrators were allegedly extorting parents and guardians. And the wild part? This extortion was reportedly disguised as mandatory fees for these graduation and end-of-session celebrations. Furthermore, the ministry explicitly noted that these actions directly violate resolutions that were already agreed upon during the 2025/2026 pre-resumption stakeholders meeting. Remember that? That was a really crucial meeting held back in September 2025 at the Lasabi Grammar School Hall in Abiyakuta. So from the government's perspective, this isn't just about the parties themselves, it's actually about a breach of a prior agreement that was specifically meant to protect families from undue financial burdens. Section 3. Breaking rules brings penalties. Looking at the consequences. Now, the circular does not leave any room for misinterpretation here. The government specifically warns that any public or private school found violating this directive will face what they call appropriate sanctions. As fellow school owners and administrators, we absolutely must take this as a stern reminder. The Ogun State government is enforcing this mandate strictly. They've stated unequivocally that the government frowns upon these gatherings, and no school owner should organize them henceforth, period. Moving on to Section 4, informing our school family, an action plan. So, the crucial point is, what do we do next? The ministry instructed us to give this the widest publicity possible. Here are 3 super practical steps to manage this on the ground and communicate effectively with our school communities. Step 1, you've got to hold an emergency staff briefing to ensure 100% internal compliance. Your teachers need to know the rules first, for sure. Step 2, let's draft a formal, empathetic letter to all parents and guardians. And Step 3, distribute this message immediately to your stakeholders using your usual channels. We're talking PTA WhatsApp groups, school bulletins, the whole shebang. And finally, Section 5, a letter to parents, communicating clearly. And this brilliantly illustrates how we can handle that Step 2 we just talked about. Here's a template we can use to break the news gently but definitively. It starts, Dear parents, per a strict new directive from the Ogun State Ministry of Education, we must immediately cancel all planned graduation and end-of-session parties. Notice what's happening here. This opening sentence doesn't lay blame, but it immediately establishes that the decision comes from a higher state authority, completely removing the burden of the decision from the local school administration. Then, the letter concludes like this. This state decision enforces the September 2025 stakeholders' resolutions to prevent undue financial burdens on families. We appreciate your immediate understanding and cooperation. This is key, guys. By directly referencing the state's own reasoning, protecting families from financial burdens based on those September 2025 resolutions in Abeokuta, this letter helps redirect any parental frustration or disappointment away from your school staff. It perfectly aligns the school with the state's goal of protecting the parents' wallets.
So this brings us to a really important place to wrap up our explainer today. Look, we all know that these celebrations are common practices. They're beloved traditions here in Ogun State. So the big question we must ask ourselves as a community right now is this. Without traditional school parties, how can our school families safely and freely celebrate student milestones at home this year? I highly encourage all parents, guardians, and educators to channel your energy into creative, cost-free celebrations that honor our students' hard work, but without breaking the new rules. Thank you so much for joining me for this virtual PTA meeting, and let's just keep supporting our students together.